Okay, what if I told you that the entire way we think about selling is, well, it's broken? Today, we are going to dissect a powerful framework called gap selling. And trust me, it's not about pitching products, it's about becoming a sales diagnostician to uncover the real reason a customer has to buy.
Now that's a pretty bold claim from sales leader Keenan, right? But let's be real. Think about it for a second. We have all been there. Buyers are completely fed up with generic pitches, and sellers, well, they're just pushing products. He argues that in our big rush for all the new tools and tech, we've lost the absolute core skill of selling. Actually solving the customer's problem.
And the result of this massive breakdown? Well, according to Keenan, half of all buyers report they bought the wrong solution. 50%. That's not just some bad stat, it's a sign of a systemic failure in how sales actually works.
So, if the whole world of sales is sick, what's the real diagnosis? How do we stop just treating symptoms and find the actual cure? Well, the answer starts with a really simple metaphor. I want you to imagine you're not feeling well, and you go to a doctor. You have two choices, and these two choices perfectly illustrate the two types of salespeople that are out there today.
So on one side, you have the product pusher. You walk in, you mention indigestion, and bam, they hand you a pill. No questions asked. But on the other side, you've got the problem solver. This doctor acts like a real diagnostician. They're asking about your symptoms, your diet, your history. They dig deep for the root cause before they would ever dream of prescribing a cure.
And look, the risk here is huge. That first doctor, they might have just given you a pill for what was actually pancreatic cancer. In sales, this is malpractice. It leads to high customer churn, it leads to failed deals, all because the real problem was never ever diagnosed up front.
Okay, so how do you become that diagnostician? It turns out you need to uncover three critical things in every single conversation. This is the anatomy of a business problem.
These are the three pillars: the problem, the root cause, and the impact. And let me be clear, if you can't identify all three for your customer, you aren't really selling, you're just taking an order. So let's break them down.
First up, the problem. This is the surface-level symptom. It's what's easy to see. For example, a customer might come to you and say, "Our sales cycle is just too long." That's the problem they see. It's what's observably going wrong in their world.
Now this is where the real diagnosis happens. The root cause is the why behind the problem. And here's the absolute key. You don't solve the problem, you solve its root causes. So if a long sales cycle is the problem, the root cause might be a terrible discovery process, or maybe an ineffective product demo. That's the thing you actually fix.
And finally, we have the impact. This is the motivation to change. This is the real cost of doing nothing. Keenan tells this amazing story of a client who is losing $325 million a year. Sounds huge, right? But for a $75 billion company, it just wasn't enough to get them to act. The key is finding the impact that matters to the person you're talking to. A $325 million loss might be a rounding error to a CEO, but what about the VP whose bonus is tied directly to that exact metric? See, if the pain isn't personal and intolerable, they won't buy the cure.
But here's the thing, just knowing this framework, that's not enough. To really execute it, you need more than a tactic. You need a fundamental shift in your entire mindset.
You absolutely cannot fake this. You have to be genuinely curious about your customer's business. So ask yourself, are you just asking questions to find an opening for your pitch? Or are you truly listening to understand their world, like you would for a friend who's in a crisis? That right there, that's the difference between an order taker and a trusted advisor.
In this mindset, it leads to a kind of code of conduct. If your diagnosis reveals a root cause that your product simply can't solve, you have an ethical duty to admit it. The right thing to do is to be prepared to walk away. Or even better, refer them to someone who can help. This isn't a sales issue, it's a character issue.
This whole diagnostic mindset isn't just about character, though. It's also the ultimate tool for testing the health of every single deal in your pipeline. And it all boils down to one incredibly powerful question.
The question is this: why do they have to buy? Not why they should buy or why it would be a nice to have. No, why do they absolutely, positively have to make a change? And guess what? The structure of your answer is completely non-negotiable. And the key is that starting phrase. Your answer must begin by articulating their painful current reality. A doctor doesn't start with the cure, they start with the diagnosis. Currently, you have a stage 3 tumor. You have to start with the pain before you can even begin to talk about the future.
So a complete answer connects all the dots we've been talking about. It has to detail their current struggles, the specific problems they're facing, the root causes that you can solve, the quantifiable business impact in dollars or percentages, and what will happen to them if they do nothing. That, my friends, is the anatomy of a real closable deal.
And that brings us to our final thought. I want you to take a hard look at your pipeline. Pick your most important opportunity. Can you, right now, answer that one question with that level of detail and clarity? Because if you can't, your diagnosis isn't complete.